Hey guys, Tyler here, and thanks for checking out this video. It's hard to believe the first tier of Shadowlands is pretty much in the books. We won't see 9.1 for a little bit here, but that does give us an opportunity to look back at how I thought Marksman Hunter turned out for the beginning of Shadowlands, and what I thought about both Raid and Mythic Plus. So, let's get started.
Mr. Eggplant presents.
So first on my list here is going to be all about Marksman Hunter, you know, our favorite spec and the whole reason you're probably checking out my videos, which I do appreciate, by the way, and I hope you guys will subscribe if you haven't. So I think Marksman Hunter was in a really good spot at the very beginning of the expansion, and I still think we are now. So what they did pretty much for Shadowlands Marksman Hunter was build on what worked for the most part with BFA Marksman Hunter, with a few different changes like where we didn't have Azurite traits like Unerring Vision and In the Rhythm, but other than that, most of the changes we saw were just built on top of what worked in BFA, which I was really excited and happy about. And so when we started off with the first tier, we were basically like a top 3 DPS. We were like in that S- tier. We weren't quite Affliction Locks or Shadow Priest, at least the very beginning, but we were in like that A plus S- tier. I'd say we're probably in the A tier right now. As for most raid DPS, I would say we're a solid 5 or 6, which I think is a perfect spot for Marksman Hunter to be in. Particularly last expansion, for the most part, you have your outliers, of course, but we were like in the bottom 3 or 4 played, not necessarily damage, but definitely played. We were down there with Survival and Feral Druids, so I think we're in a good spot. Marksman really feels it's a little clunky still, I won't lie. I'm hoping they'll add some more in the rhythm style of abilities, like what they did with Azurite with the second ring when we got into BOD and BFA. But I hope we're going to add a little bit more haste into the build itself, because the building blocks are there and it's working really well. If you are a Night Fae Marksman Hunter, you did feel the change just a little bit from our best legendary, which is Serpent Stalker. It no longer procs twice whenever your dot ticks, which is kind of a DPS loss, but it's still, it was really never meant to be that way. But you're in a really good spot if you're playing Night Fae for both single target and for AoE. We're still knocking it out of the park both. And then if you are a Kyrian hunter, you're going to see more Kyrians as we go through the expansion, just because that particularly as we get into later tiers, just how usually it works, kind of like how Unerring Vision worked for Marksman Hunters in BFA, where you just got more crit and that stacked on top of all the stats you're getting from your gear now, and it's just really going to outshine flat damage that you get from Wild Spirits, for example. But you're going to see a lot more Kyrian Hunters using the new legendary, or the updated legendary, I should say. Either the Helm, which increases True Shot, which is probably a lesser extent right now, increases it by an additional 3 seconds, and then also the Surging Shots legendary, which increases the damage of your rapid fire by 35, up from 25. Not a huge difference, but that one's more tooled for Kyrian and being able to get out that damage in that 10-second window versus, Night Fae, that sort of thing. So like I said, Marksman Hunter is an amazing position. We are the strongest, at least I feel, the strongest and most accessible to new players. That's the key thing. You want more people to be able to just pick it up and play and do medium to great damage. I'm not asking everybody to be doing like, purple and orange parses in raid or anything like that, but I really think that Marksman is in a good spot where the average player is going to be able to pick it up and do well, and that's really what BFA Marksman Hunter lacked. It was kind of a learning curve there still is, but to a lesser extent. To be able to see more Marksman Hunters in Ouroboros, for example. That is probably my favorite thing about Shadowlands, is that I see more Marksman Hunters in random groups and see less Beast Mastery. Not because I have anything against Beast Mastery, but it's just because it's good to see there is more options, and options makes the game and the class that much better. So as for Castle Nathria, the first raid of Shadowlands, I really enjoyed Castle Nathria, and I knew I would at the very beginning when we saw spoilers. Like I watched Asmongold go through there and like look at pictures and hear music, that sort of thing. I knew like the gothic castle was going to be really exciting. I'm a huge horror fan, so that probably had something to do with it. But going ahead and talking about the raid real fast, my guild took 11 weeks to go through normal and heroic. Sire was very difficult. Sire was probably the hardest, other than maybe Kill Jaden and Helya. Sire Denathrius was by far the hardest boss, AOTC boss at least, that my guild has faced. So, but that was a good thing too. I really enjoyed that fight, as I'm going to talk about here in a second. Anyway, so the top 3 bosses for Castle Nathria for me. Number 3 was Artificer Zymox. So this one was pretty much like the Mechatork fight from BOD and BFA. I know all those acronyms. It's just a random fight that's never going to necessarily get easier as you go through. Obviously, your damage will go up, so you can burn through phases faster. But like one person can wipe your group if they don't put that portal in the right spot. Particularly for the Annihilate in the phase 3, you can just kill your whole group. And on Mythic, I watched my friend Sai do a lot of Mythic pulls, and that fight is even more fun, I about said funner, more fun on Mythic, where everything happens all the time. I really enjoyed the seeds portion of the fight. I don't know why, just very interesting, and maybe it just pulled me back to my Night Fae roots as a Night Fae Marksman Hunter. So at number 2, I have Sludge Fist. I've always got a soft spot for these type of fights that are pretty much extreme DPS checks with, little mechanics. He wasn't quite a patchwork fight by any means, so don't let me confuse you there. But Sludge Fist, I liked the fact that he was lethal. Like one wrong move and you're dead. If you're chained with somebody else, you're dead, and you break that chain. I really liked the chain portion of the fight itself. Overall, I liked the dance you kind of have to do, the way you can bait the rubble circle sometimes. I tried to do that when we were doing progression. Paid for it once in a while, but it definitely helped out our group, I felt, overall. And it was just fun. I just like it whenever he would run and hit the pillar, he would yell and like cry because he'd be like, the pillar's harder than my head is. And I really enjoyed the Sludge Fist model too. It was pretty cool looking. Basically kind of like a giant Frankenstein's monster, I guess you could say. And as for my number 1 boss for this tier, you probably guessed, it's Sire Denathrius.
How exhaustingly predictable. But then I suppose failure comes naturally to your kind.
Kind of already talked about it already. I love the model. He's a very cool, sleek-looking model. Might be a Dreadlord, I'm not really sure. Anyway, I like the voice acting. Ray Chase did an amazing job. I've talked about it in several of my videos and to anybody who will listen. Like, he just did an amazing job. And listening to him at BlizzCon online, watching him turn the voice on was just absolutely a treat. I love the fight. It was very difficult. There's a lot of stuff going on, particularly in Phase 3. And it was one of those kill him or be killed situations, and I really liked that. It took my guild, I think, 90 pulls to end up killing him, so it was a little bit longer number of pulls than normal. But we just had a blast. It was so rewarding when we finally killed him. I loved his voice lines throughout the fight, and Remornia's for that matter. And I hope they build on these type of fights. He felt like an N-tier boss. He didn't feel like N'Zoth, where he was kind of a pushover, honestly. I think we killed N'Zoth like week 6, and we would still clear normal every day, or every week. And I'm just really excited to see what the Sylvanas fight for 9.1 is, and how they're going to continue to build on these good fights that they've added in Castle Nathria. So as for bosses I didn't like, I don't want to spend too much time on it, because overall I really enjoyed the whole raid as itself. I'd have to say if I didn't like one boss, it would probably be Darkvein, Lady Enerva Darkvein. Because once in a while, if you were the person that were clicking on the canisters, sometimes they would not click, sometimes they would double click, and I just felt like it was kind of buggy. It was just kind of a weird fight. Like, it wasn't an AoE fight, but it wasn't completely single target. And I don't know, if there was just one at the bottom of the barrel, it would definitely be that fight, but not necessarily because I hated it. But I do admit it was one of my favorites to do the achievement on, because I love me some Dark Animus. My Son of Animus is one of my favorite battle pets, and that has to do. As we shift ahead to Mythic Plus, Marksman is one of the top specs currently for Mythic Plus. Maybe we're not up to the level of Boomkin or, let's say, Fire Mage, but we're in a really good spot for Mythic Plus, and I had so far a lot of fun doing the new dungeons that they've added. I have not got my Keystone Master yet, which is timing 15s in all of the dungeons. I am currently 4 of 8 of those, but I'm very close on some of the others. I should get it here in a couple of weeks as of recording this video. But real quick, my favorite dungeons. So I said at the beginning of the expansion, The Other Side would be one of my favorites, and so far it is. I'm going to put it at number 3 on my list right now. I really enjoy the different, like going to Hakar, then going back to the Mana Storms, and then finally the Zymox, but he's not Zymox. I can't think of his name. The Trader. I really like going and fighting those in those different areas. It's just a really interesting and cool looking dungeon, and of course Bonsomni's there. Who doesn't love that, right? And then at number 2, I have Spires of Ascension. So Bastion is one of my favorite looking favorite looking Covenant areas in the Shadowlands, only behind maybe the Night Fae area of Ardenweald. But Spires, it's a little bit long of a dungeon. Like that's one of the downfalls of it. There's some interesting packs in there that can make or break your runs, but overall I really like the feel of the dungeon. It flows really well. I like to go to all the different platforms, and it does help that there's quite a few dungeon drops that come out of there for Marksman Hunters. A weapon, trinkets, that sort of thing that make it something that I run quite often. And then, of course, my number 1 is going to be the Mists of Tyrna's Scythe, which is one of the dungeons in Ardenweald. And in fact, both of them are in my top 3, and I'm a Night Fae Marksman Hunter. Go figure. Miss is the freehold of this expansion. It's fairly easily timed. It's something that most groups are going to be running for, like trinkets, for like changeling, that sort of thing. And it's just a fun dungeon. There's some interesting things that we haven't seen in a while. For example, like going from boss 1 to 2, where you have the maze. That's something that's a lot of fun. It can trip up some groups. But overall, it is my favorite dungeon. We'll have to see what the Season 2 affix is going to be. Maybe that might change some things. So as for my least favorite dungeon, it's probably going to be Sanguine Depths. It's not probably, it's Sanguine Depths. I don't like that place. I have wiped and killed so many keys in there. There's not necessarily very many upgrades in there either, so that definitely plays into part. I want to get in there, do my 15 for the expansion, and get out. It is pretty much going to be like a Toll de Gore. And then really quick, as for the affixes for the first tier of Shadowlands, my favorite affix they added was Prideful. It is the Season 1 affix. I'm going to be really sad when it's gone. I love the concept of it. It makes sense. It definitely helps some of your lower geared players push keys that maybe they have no business being in, if I'm being honest. It makes 10 keys easier than 9 keys. It really does. It's pretty much kind of like the part reaping affix of like getting the buff, but you don't have to actually wipe and kill the key to get that increased damage buff. It's fun. It makes the dungeons more interesting, I think. It allows you to kind of play around with percentages and be a little bit more strategic with your runs. Thing I don't like, some of the other new affixes like Storming. I am a very long-ranged player, so I don't have to worry about stuff like that most of the time, but I wish they would maybe retool those a little bit to maybe be a little bit easier for your average group, so they don't have to just run with all ranged, just because that stuff hurts and it's very annoying, particularly when I'm on my Death Knight doing some random stuff. So finally looking ahead to Season 2 of Shadowlands Mythic Plus and 9.1, which will bring out the new raid, which sounds like it's going to be in the Maw, where we're going to get to fight Sylvanas. Sounds like they might be giving her the Gul'dan treatment, but we'll have to wait and see. I'm really not sure what to expect for Season 2, just because they haven't really put out a lot of information. BlizzCon line was pretty bare bones. A lot of people were upset about that. Which it sounds like they're really not ready for 9.1 yet. I'm going to guess we'll probably see it in May, June, probably June. If it's June and they have to delay it just a little bit, that's perfectly fine by me. It just allows me to work on some other things, maybe not necessarily spend so much time playing the game, and just enjoy other things that aren't necessarily World of Warcraft, which is, is perfectly fine. I'm hoping when they said they're going to add new conduits, they'll probably change some things too, so I fully expect to see some Kyrian changes, some Night Fae changes, maybe buffing Venthyr and Necrolord. That way they're played a little bit more, in that Night Fae isn't like the king of most Marksman Hunters. But I hope that I kind of said it at the top, I hope they add some more of the things that worked in BFA, so like your Unerring Vision type of ability, or add like a trait type thing, or in the rhythm, where it allows you to gain haste, because that's the one thing that Marksman struggles with right now, is to do good damage, you need to be stacking mastery and stacking crit, and have a low haste, which is it's easy once you get used to it, but having more haste and having a readily available extra amount of haste that isn't the steady focus buff would be huge to making the spec easier to play for your average player, and for your above average player, they can really take advantage of that and do some nasty damage. So I'm really looking forward to that. Hopefully we'll see some changes. I'll post a video once they start putting out some sort of snapshots, that sort of thing, on PTR builds. I'll do my best to check that stuff out for you guys. And as for the raid, I'm excited. I love every raid, I'll be honest with you. I even love like Crucible of Storms. Like, I'm always looking forward to a new raid tier, which means new raid bosses, new raid mechanics, and hopefully some really cool interactions with Sylvanas, since it's been building for quite some time. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. If you got all the way to this spot in the video, thank you so much for watching my videos, and I hope you guys are enjoying Shadowlands so far. I hope that 2021 is better than 2020. I hope you'll also consider following me over at Twitch, at twitch.tv/MrEggplant. These are truly a treat to kind of look back and just enjoy how far we've come so far. I'll have one for 9.1, Season 2, once that happens. But this was something that I got away from in BFA that I wanted to bring back in Shadowlands. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.